Denise Dubick. I will be helping with Unity today. So, hey Riley, it looks like it's just one right now. Could you raise your hand if you can see my screen? Thanks. Let's hang out for a minute, yeah, and see if anyone else comes. But we will be continuing with Unity. If you could either raise your hand if you don't mind speaking, or type in where we are. If you guys are still at the end of lesson 3, okay, you missed the last webinar. Okay, well, make sure you watch those recordings. Nicholas, were you at the last webinar? Nicholas, when you get a chance, if you could just type and let me know if you were at the last webinar. Oh, I'm sorry, Riley. I did not realize that it was not already on there. For Monday? Let me ask Mr. Dubick. So let's hang out maybe till 4 or 5, see if anyone else is joining us. And Nicholas, when you get a chance, please let me know where you are, if you are at the last webinar. Great. Nicholas, did they finish lesson 4 or lesson 3? Or are you still working on lesson 4? I mean, I'm sorry. Did you finish lesson 3 or are you still working on lesson 3? This is what lesson 3 looks like. Adding walls and then adding prizes. Basically adding 3D objects that are going to trigger something to happen. Okay, still working on the prizes. Sounds good. Let's see here. Okay. And Riley, I'm waiting to hear back from Mr. Dubick. You can try your best to continue with us. Some of your code won't work, but you can still make new scripts and then, use that eventually attach. So let's say you don't have this the prize yet, you can still make your cube rotate script, that sort of stuff. And I'm gonna figure out what's going on with those. And I can help you with that as well. I definitely want you to stay and work this evening. Nicholas, does this look do you have cube rotate working? Do you mind if I unmute you, Nicholas? Could you raise your hand if you don't mind me just speaking with you? Or, oh, don't have a mic, okay. Let's see. Have you made the prize rotate, the little box? It's called cube rotate. I got the cube to rotate, okay. And is it a prefab? Did you make a folder called prefab? Okay, we'll start there. So, and Daniel, if you could let me know whether or not you are here on Monday, that'll help me out with pacing. Okay. So, and I'll show you on my code, or on my game. Okay, Daniel, you were here too? Cool. So when we start playing, we have these cubes that we set to rotate. This is eventually what your game will look like, where you have to collect them. And that's what we're trying to create now. We want to add code so that, oops, I'm not very good at my own game, so that you'll be able to run into the block and collect it. But to make the game, a little bit more fun than just collecting one, we want to go ahead and make several. So let's talk about that for a second. We very well could go through all of those steps again, or just command copy or control copy and control paste these game objects. However, building individual game objects in Unity is all fine and good, but it can lead to problems in the future. When you have an object like an NPC, a prop, a piece of scenery, an enemy, something like that, that is reused several times within a scene, and you want to change something about that one, you want to change some aspect of your enemy or your prop, but you want all copies to change, that's a very annoying thing to do. If I had just made 6 copies by just duplicating these blocks, and then I went to change them from white to pink, I would have to drag the pink material over all 6, which does not sound like the end of the world when you have 6 cubes that you can easily see. But see, this is scene 2, what you guys will eventually be building. Oh, here we go. When you have your prizes spread out all over your terrain and you have multiple that you're going to be making these changes to, that can be very frustrating, annoying to do. So that's why object-oriented programming is so nice. You're able to create instances, copies that are connected. So if you change the property of one instance, it will change the property, that same property, on every copy that was made. So if you had an enemy and if you play on easy mode, they have a health score of 5, you could go ahead and duplicate that scene to make a hard mode where their health, they had 10 health points. And all you'd have to do is change that property on one of them, and it would update on all of them. So it's very nice. It's called instances. Prefabs are that's the term that we're using here. A prefab is something that you're going to make copies from. So prefabs make a template of a game object. You take a game object and you make a template from it so that you can make more. And it has, complete with all components and properties. So scripts, and all of that information. Any edits made to a prefab are immediately reflected in all instances. So that's an important distinction here. If I make a change, notice that this box is yellow. I can make a change to a copy and not all will change. But if I make a change to the original, then all will change. Okay. And that has to do with inheritance, which we'll talk about here. Prefabs inherit the components and properties of the original game object. So they inherit the properties from that template. You can override components and settings for each instance individually. So if you're playing Pac-Man, the ghosts are kind of all instances from one ghost. They all have very similar properties, but they're different colors. right? Pac-Man, they're different color ghosts. You can change the settings, but they'll still have the majority of the same properties. If you want all instances to inherit an edit, you must edit the original. And I'm not sure if you guys did any Google SketchUp, but you'll see that in Google SketchUp. When you make a component, you can edit the component, or you can edit the component so that all components change. Or you can do something called quote-unquote exploding a component so that it is, you can make a change and it won't affect the other instances. Okay, so we're going to start by just making an assets folder and dragging prize into that. So if I'm in my assets folder, and I know I have a few more assets than you all, and I apologize. Did not have enough time to start over on a new game, and I actually made the slides for the notes. So if you go to your assets folder down here, you will right click and create a folder called prefabs, just like the folder I have there. And even if you weren't here, so Riley, you could do this as well. And Garen, I'm glad you joined us this evening. My name is Denise Dubik, Miss Dubik, and I will be teaching you guys Unity today. Okay, so you make a folder called prefabs, and then you don't have all these prizes, right? You just have one prize. It should say prize on it. It's the rotating cube. What you're going to want to do is click and drag that prize into the prefabs folder, just like you see here, so that you have your one prize cube in that folder. This is the original game object. For me now, and you can see yours is not like this yet, but if I scale this one, all instances will change as well. But I'm not going to do that. And actually, you can see when I click this, none of these blocks actually select. This is the original. This is like the cookie cutter from which you make cookies from. You guys are going to bear with me a little bit on my speed. If I'm going too slowly or too quickly, I'll ask in just a few minutes how you think the pace is going. Guest lecturing this class, if you will. Oops. Okay. So you made an assets folder called prefabs, and you dragged your prize cube into it. And now you want to copy and paste your prize object several times within the hierarchy window. Using Command-C and Command-V, which if you're using a Windows machine is Control-V. So what you're doing is you're actually selecting prize in your hierarchy window and Command-C, Command-V. And it's currently in the exact same spot as your other ones. You're actually going to have to move it, but we'll do that. That's the next step. So it might not look like you're making copies, but as long as there are copies there over to the side, you are making copies. And do that several times. You'll want about, maybe 4, 5. After you make your copies, move them around with the red and yellow arrows. So eyes on my screen for a moment. I know you guys are working on your own stuff. but this is really important. You don't want to just click and grab the box because it can end up really high off of your playing field. You only want to move it along the flat axis. So to do that, make sure you're in global mode. So if you look at my screen up here, you'll see global. And only use these red and blue axes. Make sure it stays flat as you move it around, each copy. If you have it in local mode, it's going to do some wacky stuff. So you don't want to do that. Make sure it's in global mode. It says global. And move your boxes, the copies that you made around using the red and the blue axis there. Okay. I'll give you guys a moment to do that. You'll want something similar to what I have, except all of your blocks will be pink. Or, I'm sorry, all of your blocks currently are white. So all of your blocks will be white. Okay. Yes, 5 would be great, Daniel. Yes, Nicholas. Yes, Nicholas. Oh. Hello? Oh, you don't have a mic. It's nothing. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and give the poll. How is my pacing? I like the options for this one. Too fast, too slow, good. Great. Wonderful. You guys are easy. Easy going. No, not easy that. Okay, so. All right. Go ahead, throw your hand up, raise your hand when you're ready to move on. Next step. Great, perfect. All right, let's see what's next here. Okay, so this is what you should have. This is what your screen should look like. And now we're going to create an empty game object just to keep them all together. And the reason that's nice is that we'll be able to move them as one, you know, if you so choose. So I've already done that here, but what you're going to do is game object, create empty. And that should come up. It should just say game object on your screen. And if you guys remember, you hit enter. And that's just a common thing. You'll see that throughout software. And you can name it. I would name it prizes. I already have one named prizes. It's not going to let me name it that. But and then hit enter. And then just like what you did with the walls, you'll just gather all your prizes. I can show you this here. All of them are off to the side. Well, you'll just grab them all and put them, just like you see here, into prizes. So if I could show you that. Okay. So now we're going to test out our prefabs. And by that I mean test out the power of prefabs. We're going to make a new material, and I can go ahead and do this. So in your assets folder, you should have a folder called materials. So you'll double click it and right click to create a new material. And I'm going to call this one prize 2, but originally I called it prize color. Okay. We are going to give this a color, and that's clicking that box next to albedo. And just for the sake of this example, I'm going to go ahead and give them a new color. Mine will be orange, like an, well, there we go. And maybe I'll make mine a little shiny by adding to the metallic. And that's that material there. Okay, so eyes on my screen for a moment, because this part gets a little tricky. I just want to show this here. What you're going to do is under your assets folder, you're going to go to prefabs and you're going to select prize. And because you want the prizes inspector window to be open, okay? And then keep your eyes on my screen just for a moment. Then back down here, you'll navigate to materials, but notice that the prize inspector window is still open. You didn't click on any of these on the screen. You did that through your prefabs folder, and the reason is because everything on the screen is an instance of that prefab. So you can drag prize 2 on as the material, and notice how it changed it for the material for all of them on my screen, and it should for your screen as well. Let me know if that does not work for you. And eyes on my screen for a second, notice how if I have prize color up here, it's confused. It thinks I'm trying to add it to the box collider or something. If I drag it over add component, it will work. Okay. If you guys could raise your hand once you've got this to work. Great. Okay. So if you just drag it onto one, it's just one that's going to change color, but if you drag it onto the prize itself, all will change color, which is very nice if you're making a giant game, which eventually we will be, or we're going to be set up to. So that's what this should look like. So now let's actually get into some, an actual game event, picking up an object. So we're going to learn this basic thing where when we collide with this object, when our sphere collides with a cube, the cube disappears. But this is actually very powerful because we're learning about collider interaction, and so this is really what leads to many possibilities with your own games. We're going to start with it just being that the box disappears. But think about all of the possibilities in a game. It's really that game event of two things colliding. Maybe the box is a bomb. Maybe the box is a power-up, right? So this is really, there's a lot of potential with this, just this simple thing that we're going to set up. So we don't need a new script. We're going to add on to the player move script. And our prize is going to act as a trigger. When our player bumps into a trigger, our code will check to see if the trigger is tagged. And we're going to get to this in a second, but just so that you guys see, don't worry about tagging yours yet. But just so you see what I'm talking about, it's tagged up here. It lets, because the sphere could run into the wall and nothing happens. The wall's not tagged. But when the sphere runs into this cube, it's going to be checking to see what the tag is in our code. So we're adding a new function on trigger enter. And you can also see here that this box is a trigger. So that means something's going to happen once the sphere hits the cube. So we have function start right now, and we have function update. Function start is at the beginning of the code. Function update it's like a forever loop that gets refreshed several times per frame. But on trigger enter, this sequence of code within on trigger enter gets run when the sphere actually collides with when the sphere, because the script is attached to the sphere, but this could be for anything. So when our sphere hits a collider or collides with something else. So our condition for this if statement is going to be if the other game object that we collided with, so this is kind of like this from Code Combat. So other.gameObject.tag, so the tag of this other game object that we collided, if it's equivalent to the string pick up, and we're actually making the string pick up. That could say pizza or anything, smelly cat. It doesn't matter. We are actually made, and you all will in just a moment, make that tag. So in the future, you could have a tag that says bomb or a tag that says power up. But okay, so that's what our if statement is going to say. It's checking for this condition. So anytime our sphere touches another collider, it's going to check to see if the tag of that collider reads pick up. And if it does, we want that other game object that we just ran into to be set, to no longer be set active. And so what does that do? If you look at my screen, see how there's this checkbox next to the object. When I unclick it, it's no longer set to active. So essentially, it no longer exists in my game. It's not just invisible, but the script is no longer running. All of that. Okay. And we have this debug line there just to make sure that it's working. So let's say your cube doesn't actually disappear, but the debug log is run, well, maybe your capitalization is wrong in the tag. So we just want to make sure that everything is working. It's a form of troubleshooting. So where does this go? It fits in right here. So you guys can go ahead and fit it in there. And let me know if you have a question on how this works. So this is in your player move script. To get to that, under assets, double click scripts, and that should be the player move. And this is the new section here. Note, this is separate from function update. You have the initial curly brace for function update and the ending curly brace for function update before you have on trigger enter. That's still in this larger class. And take your time on this. Be really careful with punctuation. Oh, Nicholas, you're ready to go. Raise your hand when you're ready to continue. Oh, wow. Okay, you guys are fast typers. Just one more second while someone else catches up. Okay, wow. I'm used to working with, I think, younger grades, so it'll take them a while. Okay. That's great. So we can't play it yet. It won't work because we don't have a tag. And our prizes aren't triggers. So let's go ahead and do that. The first thing we're going to do, let me put down everyone's hand. We are going to select our prize from our prefabs menu. You don't want to click on a box down here because that's just going to be an instance of it. You want to click on the prizes inside your prefabs folder. And okay, here we go. Up here. Yours for tag should read untagged. So you want to click that and select add tag. And it'll bring you to this little menu. And something that's kind of annoying about Unity is that you can't navigate away from this. So once you add pickup with the little plus, add to list, you'll have to click on prize down here again to navigate back to here. So once you actually type in pickup, and be careful with that capitalization, select pickup from the tags. Then you want to click the checkbox next to is trigger in your box collider. And the last step is to add a component, and you want to add a physics component, a rigid body. You see down here. And you want it to be kinematic, which just means that physics will not affect this object. Like a collision won't affect this object. Like it won't get pushed away before it can disappear. So tag should be pickup. It is a trigger. and you added a rigid body and made sure, oh goodness gracious. And you want to make sure it's kinematic. Yeah, you can raise your hand when you're done. When you are done, you want to go ahead and check by clicking on several of your prizes to make sure that they're all tagged, they all have a trigger, and that they all have a rigid body that's kinematic. And then go ahead and play. You should be able to pick up your boxes, and if you look under your console, you should see that your debug line is working. Oh, I ran out of time. But you should be able to roll around forever. The next lesson, we add the timer and the score, so we should be able to get started on that tonight. And raise your hand once you've kind of tried it out and ran around for a little bit. Enjoy your victory. All right, great. And let's keep going. So yeah, since we used prefabs, we only had to do it once. Hooray! And it should work. Oh, and we're done. We're done with lesson 3. Great victory. Let's move on to lesson 4. So this is where we start getting into some fun stuff. We add a winning element and then a losing element. And so to do that, we're going to add an UWI. Has anyone heard of a GUI before? Great. Yeah. Garen, do you want to share? I'm going to unmute you. What's a GUI? No? Okay, that's fine. A GUI is a graphic or graphical user interface. It is how our beautiful desktops are now available to us. And it's a way to communicate to your user or your player. So on our game, we're going to use an UWI, or a user interface. They actually got rid of the G with Unity 5. We're going to use an UWI to add text that communicates to your player. So you're going to go ahead and create a text object here. And what happens when you create that is that you have a whole canvas gets created. That's why I'm going through this whole explanation of what you just did. This canvas, this is your player's computer screen. Okay, so I'm going to ask you guys to move this in a moment. And notice how when I have my scene up, it looks weird. It looks really far away from the plane. And I double-clicked canvas to get this view, and I kind of zoomed in and orbited a little bit. But when I click my game tab, it's up in the corner that I put it in up here. And you are just right now, yours should say new text, and it should be gray. So don't worry if it doesn't look like this. What you're going to do, yeah, it should say new text, and it should be kind of off to the left. But this whole canvas gets created because that's the user interface that you're presenting to your user. And you're going to use these, it says yellow, kind kind of red and green arrows to move your new text up in the upper left corner. Okay, so once it's up in the upper left corner and you use the move arrows for that, make sure, opening Keynote here, make sure that you're using the move tool. And you can use these positions too if you want to just use -208, 243, that should work. And you're going to give it the following attributes. You want it to say score. We don't have any font choices right now. All you got is Arial, so hope you're happy with Arial. But you want it to be bold, size 20, and white. Color to be white. And you guys are probably getting very used to this. Raise your hand when you're ready to move forward. Great. Okay. So again, we're just going to add it to the player move script. Player move has kind of become our essential script for the game, for gameplay. So open player move, you should already have it open, and we're going to add a private variable called count. And count is going to be our kind of like our score. Whenever we pick up a cube or a prize, 1 is going to be added to count. So how do we do that? You add a private variable called count up at the top in our variable declarations. And the line below, setting the cube to no longer active, you're going to add 1 to count. And this is a fancy little shorter way of saying count equal to count plus 1. Shorthand. Okay. Raise your hand when you're ready to continue. Great. You're going to add actually a new function, and this will be the first time that we do this. All the functions we've been using so far are already associated with Unity. Yeah. So on trigger enter, start, update, these are just functions that are built in. But we're going to add our own called set count text. And the definition is going to be below on trigger enter, not within on trigger enter. And it's simple function declaration, just like any other function declaration that you've done if you've ever used JavaScript before. If you haven't, it's just like this. You have the name of your function, and then what you want, the lines that you want run anytime the function is called, you put inside the curly braces. What's really nice about the way that JavaScript is written, normally if you're using Python, for example, you need all of your function declarations at the top of your code because you have to declare a function before you're able to call it. And that makes sense. You want to teach Python or Unity or whatever you're using the word set count text early on so that it can recognize it later in your code. And that would be true in JavaScript as well if you wrote this a little differently. If you wrote var set count text equals function, and then you defined it. But the way that we use the function, it's like a shorthand. It allows you to define a function anywhere in your code and have it be callable anywhere, which is really, really powerful. So something that's not entirely necessary to learn, but if you have been programming before and you're like, why do we have our declaration below where we call it? That's why. So this is the function declaration, or the definition here. And this is the call up here. So set count text in parentheses. We don't have any parameters set up for it. And then down here, you'll see that we're setting the text to our game object count text to be count, the string count, plus whatever information is saved in our variable count. And in just a moment, we'll declare a variable count text. So it's a little out of order, but right now just add that line. So this will update the score for the player to see. And count text is a reference to the UI text object we just created. And so up here you have var count text UI text. And I wish I had a full version of that for you, but I do not. But I have the power to make one. So raise your hand when you're ready to move on. Great. Okay, so before we can hit play, we need to, we created this reference, but as you have seen before, you need to assign the game object in here. We just told it up here that there would be a game object, specifically a text object. But now we have to go in and set it. So sometimes this takes a little time to work, but you go to your sphere where player move is attached, and you should see count text as kind of a space there. You hit the little circle next to it, and you select what for you all should say just text for right now. We're about to rename it count score since we're going to be adding more text, but for right now it should just say text. And once you've done that, play the game. Collect your cubes once you've played around with it for a little bit. You know what to do. Raise your hand. And make sure, type in a question if something's not working for you. Where are my questions? Okay. And I'm just waiting to see on the, let's see. Can you repeat what we have to do? Sure. Okay. Okay. On monodevelop, you'll need to add, so I've got a lot here. I don't want to confuse these. Let me go to this one. On monodevelop, you add the set count text definition as well as the call. And you also have to add this count text UI text, this declaration that's going to be able to let us access that UI object. When you go to the sphere in your game, you click on the sphere and you look at the components in the inspector window, you should see this space for the variable count text here. And you need to click that circle to set it equal to your UI object text. Okay, great. All right, Garen, is something not working for you? Let me know if there's any way I can help. Or if there's anything you need me to show you again. Garen, I want to go ahead. We have 5 minutes. I want to go ahead and show you guys how to add a win. So I'm going to move forward, but you'll have the recording, and if you send me a message, I can help you more specifically. Okay, so you're going to add a new text object, a new UI text object, and name. Whoa. Before you do that, name the first one score. Select it in your hierarchy window, click it, hit enter, and call it score. Then create a new one, select it, right click, call it win. I'm going to put everyone's hands down. Okay, so now you have two UI objects, score and win. You want to, again, use those arrows to move the text object up right below count score. So remember, you double click the canvas, kind of scroll in here, and then in time remaining, no, I'm sorry. Oh, the you win. You don't want that up here. You want it in the middle of your screen. So you use the arrows to get it to kind of the middle of your screen where you see that flowery shape. You can make your font bigger, but if you make your font bigger, what you're going to have to do is additionally make, oops, my Unity here, make the width and height of your of this box bigger. So I just kept my UN small for now. You know, if I'm continuing with game development, I'm probably going to want to add a screen that takes up the whole thing that says I win. So move it to the center of your screen, make it size 26, bold, and white. Raise your hand when you're ready to move forward. Great. Let's get to the code. Then remove the text from the text box because we don't want the player to see it until they win. So delete all text from the text box. We're going to define a function called win that when it is called, winText.text is set to U1. You're going to call, inside your onTriggerEnter, you're going to add an if statement that counts to see how big count is. So if count is greater than 5, and this is going to depend on the number of prizes that you have. If you have 5 in total, then you would need count to be greater than 4. But I have 6 in total, so when count is greater than 5, you're going to call the win function that you just made. And I'm going to add this whole code, this screen that shows all of the code up here. So here are the lines that you need to add. You need to check to see if count is greater than 5 and then call win. And you need to add your function win that sets winText to U1. And up here you need to create the reference to winText. One moment. And that should work. What you're gonna have to do, I don't have this line in here. Let me go ahead and add the slide. You're gonna have to do this step again, but for winText. Okay, so you're gonna have to set winText to be score, you win, or what have you. All right. This is where I'm going to leave you guys tonight. I'm going to leave the screen up for a little bit longer, but I do have I have more webinars, so I've got to get going in a second. So I'm going to leave the screen up a little bit longer. Does anyone have a question off the bat? I'm ready to continue. Oh, thanks, Garrett. Okay, well, I'm going to leave it up. Riley, I'm not sure. I never heard back from Mr. Dubik, but I will. I've now let him know that it's not up, and so it should be up soon. Sorry, Riley. Yes, we're done. This is the last thing we're doing. I was just leaving it up in case anyone else was typing. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. All right. Daniel, I'm okay. Oh, thank you. It was a pleasure.